Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel BethChatsBooks. Now today's video is going to be a book review of A Complicated Kindness by Miriam Toews. I don't really know how to pronounce her last name, but we're going to go with it. So this is the book in question. Now I've just recently read this a day or two ago and I've decided to give it on my Goodreads. I gave it a 4.8/5. Now there's a couple of books in the past few months that I've given a similar 5-star rating of. One such being Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriela Garcia Marquez. And I think both of them have very similar themes, or they kind of gave me a similar gut reaction. So this book is set in a Mennonite community in Manitoba. So that is very similar to an Amish upbringing. There's a founder who created this community and brought them over there, and Nomi, who is the main character who we deal with a lot, her uncle Hans is kind of in charge of this community where they're settled at the moment. Now we learn as we go through the book that her sister, Aunt Tash, and her mother are absent from the story, and as we learn further on in the story, the reason they're absent is because they both got excommunicated. Hans made the decision along with a kind of committee. This is going to be spoilers now, so if you don't want any spoilers, you know, you can check some synopsises out, order it, and like bugger off this channel for a sec, because this is all going to be spoilers from here on out, so just a warning. So we find out at the end that Nomi herself is going to be excommunicated because she has a very tragic identity crisis throughout this book. She begins a relationship with a boy called Travis, and she becomes besotted with Travis, and it then goes kind of tragically wrong for her. So she becomes very obsessive with him, and he becomes very obsessive with the idea that she needs to get the pill so that they can have sex. And eventually she does, and they do have sex, and she says afterwards she feels like she did it wrong because no magical sparks happened, he wasn't comforting, and he didn't contact her afterwards. And then she then finds out that he was working at the museum with another lady, and she sees his truck is parked outside one of the motels, and he must be in there with her, and we kind of get the gist that he's had an affair. But before this, she's been going off the rails a lot. She takes a lot of recreational drugs, she smokes a lot. She then ends up having an identity crisis later on in the novel where she shaves all her hair off. She tries her best with her father, but they don't communicate in very conventional ways. They leave each other notes on the side of the kitchen table with very abstract questions. And she feels sorry for him, and then I think at the end we realise, just before she gets excommunicated herself, that she finds some letters from Mr. Quirring, her teacher, that was addressed to her mother, and it seemed like they were having some kind of affair. And we don't really know whether this came out or not. We know that both her sister and her mother ended up leaving, and she's about to get excommunicated, and then her father leaves, and it's seen as a sacrifice that her father leaves because he believes in the community and he's very religious. But he knows that if he stays and she gets excommunicated, he has to pick between religion and supporting her. So he leaves so that she can have the opportunity to leave herself, and that none of the family ends up stuck in the Mennonite community any longer. However, it's very tragic and horrible at the end because she decides to simply just stay there. And the book ends with her on her bedroom floor saying, "I've had all these imaginings of me just taking the truck that he's left behind, grabbing all my stuff and leaving. But," she said, "I haven't managed to do that yet. I'm still in the process of thinking about it." And it's really tragic because you just have this belief that she's just going to stick around, going to stay on the fringes of the society, never being allowed back in again, that she hasn't got the drive to go and find her family, that she's depressed, that her life seems void of any contentment. Her boyfriend's left her, all of her family have left her, and she's having some kind of mental breakdown. It's very, very distressing to read. I had this heavy heart from the minute I read the first page till the end. It's written in a beautiful, beautiful style, so some sentences are very lyrical, other very poetic, but the minute you read it you have this dampening sadness, this melancholic tone is created, and I didn't want to leave the character of Nomi. I really wanted things to work out for her, and the ambiguity at the end is beautiful because it doesn't want you to have a certainty over her future one way or another. We would like Nomi to leave the community and find something for herself and be contented, but there is no promise in that. And I thought that was very well done, because sometimes authors want to cop out, sometimes they love their characters dearly and want things to work out, but she sacrificed this character. We didn't ever get to find out what was going to happen. We didn't ever get to find out where the rest of her family were. We didn't get a closure. And as a reader, that is very powerful because it gives you the ability to mull this story over and to comprehend it. And I'm still trying to comprehend this story. It's still very much with me. I had a very strong emotive response to Nomi and the story. It was really interesting because when I picked this up, based on the cover, if you can see, it looks kind of like a cheesy charity shop read. Now that sounds really awful because I do read in charity shops, but you wouldn't, looking at it, see very much about what the inner story was going to be about. And this was a massive surprise to me because I didn't know anything about Mennonite communities. The author herself was from a Mennonite community in Manitoba, so there is a strong emotional attachment from the author when she's writing this, and this is why you get that gut emotive response when you're reading it. And it was fascinating because this is Canadian literature, obviously, for my Canadian Appreciation Month, and I did not expect to have such a strong reaction to this kind of book. I thought it wouldn't surprise me, and this book certainly surprised me. It has very similar themes and a similar main character, I think, to Catcher in the Rye with Holden Caulfield, but in a less obnoxious sense. Nomi's not very obnoxious. She's very unaware of her own mental instabilities. She's very unaware of her crying for help and her relationships and the toxic way that she's not moving forward. She's very clinically depressed, I think, in this novel, but unlike Holden, she's got a modesty about her, and I believe that's because the community she's been raised in, she's not been educated or cultured or understanding of what's going on, so she doesn't know that there's a big world out there. She only gets access to the outside world through almost like a film, because American tourists often come to visit this weird isolated community, and so most of her perceptions of the outside world are from these tourists who are gawping at her. It's just a fantastic read. It moved me to tears. I wanted to dissect almost the story into bits and to compartmentalise and to strip down how I felt about each different scenario and each different outcome within this book. The characters are very well fleshed out, and they're not perfect, but there's a depth to them. There's an understanding, there's a subtlety here. She doesn't seem to understand things that are going on around her, but the way that it's written, we can decipher these things because we realise this is almost like a Bildungsroman, and she gets more awareness of what's going on as she gets older. The story's framed that way, however, we have inclinations of why things might have gone awry. And Trudy, her mother, is a very interesting character because she's in conflict between the fact that her brother Hans is the charge of this community, but she doesn't have the faith in this community. She doesn't believe in this way of life, and she kind of wants to educate her children and to shelter them at the same time and to be a good example and stay within this community. So she's a very, very conflicted woman, and her relationship to the father is very interesting because there is a certain level of love there, but they are on two different life planes. The father wants to bury his head in the sand and live in this community, and the mother can no longer live that way, and so she has to break free. So there's so many interesting themes about families, about this kind of community, about religion, and the kind of coming of age story, but this is a deeper coming of age story because she's had a lot of things that she can't process about her life that have affected her behaviour and her mental state. So many things that this made me think and feel, and I would highly recommend, if you want to know more about this story, please go check it out, because all the themes I mentioned, it has that, but it also has much more. It has a depth, a richness, it's beautifully written, and for such a short book, it's only 230 pages, 240 pages, it packs such a punch. And it seems to me a very underestimated read because I'd never heard of it before. In Canada itself, it got lots of awards and seems to be very highly acclaimed. So I'm so glad I picked this up, and I really would recommend to people, if anything that I've said in this review interests you at all, please check it out. Because I got this on World of Books for £2 or £3. It was really very cheap. So it's very worth checking out if it interests you at all. So there's that. So that was my book review of A Complicated Kindness. If you'd like to leave any comments down below about whether you've read it and enjoyed it, whether you've read it and you didn't, whether you would like to read it, or you would like any more specific based answers to things that interested you within the book, then please leave a comment down below. I'm more than happy to do that. But that was it for now, and I'll be back soon with some more videos for you, so make sure that you hang around to check them out. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you very soon.